Good day everyone, Grimos here with another DCS video, and today I want to take a look at the Focke-Wulf 90 D-9 module for DCS. There were some requests for more World War II stuff on the channel, and I figured I'd take a look at the World War II modules available for DCS, starting with the Focke-Wulf 90. Now, the World War II part of DCS is still somewhat rudimentary, with 3 planes available, the B-51D, B-49K4 and Focke-Wulf 90 D-9. But I hope that the release of ED's Spitfire Mark 9 as well as France's 1944 map isn't too far in the future anymore, as well as the 2.5 version, which hopefully brings a few improvements in damage model and air-to-air spotting. Several third-party developers also have World War II planes in their program, so with those things potentially on the horizon, I thought it might be a good time to get a little bit more into World War II fighters again in DCS, to give those Spitfires a fitting welcome when they do arrive. So, let's talk a little bit about the Focke-Wulf 90. As usual, I will give a brief overview of the plane's history and capabilities, and then we take a look at the fight or two in it, which took place on the ACG public multiplayer server. But as mentioned, I just got into flying World War II fighters in DCS, having bought the Focke-Wulf 90 in the summer sale. So the fights we will take a look at aren't to show off any great flying. I still need more experience in this at least somewhat new environment, but I think it is still interesting to take a look at some of those early flyouts, even though mistakes were certainly made in them. But first, let's take a quick look at the Focke-Wulf 90 in DCS. Now, the Focke-Wulf 90 in general, and the D version especially, are generally considered to be among the best fighter designs in World War II. Fast, well-armed and armored and rugged, as well as pilot-friendly, at least as far as the high-powered World War II fighters go. The development of the Focke-Wulf 90 originally started in early 1939, when the B-49 was already in service with the Luftwaffe. It is not 100% clear today why the decision was made to contract Focke-Wulf with designing another single-seat fighter when the B-49 was already in service and in Germany at this time considered to be the best fighter of this type currently in service. But one reason was most likely that it became clear that the 109's dominance would be short-lived, and designs of at least similar performance would enter service in competing air forces. The Bf-109 would of course be upgraded over time to improve its performance, but with the aviation technology advancing very fast at this time, it was apparently decided to be a good idea to also develop a new fighter from scratch, with the newest developments taken into consideration right from the start. The fact that the B-49 was already in service and the new Focke-Wulf design was not needed as a replacement for it at this stage allowed the design team at Focke-Wulf some more freedom in the design and produce a fighter with a different underlying philosophy than the B-49. The development department in charge of the Focke-Wulf 90's design was led by Kurt Dank, who had served in World War I, and this experience reportedly influenced the design of the Focke-Wulf 90 quite a bit. The B-49 or also the Spitfire were very lightweight designs to get the best power-to-weight ratio and speed out of them. That lightweight design, however, also made them comparatively fragile and limited the amount of armament and armor they were able to carry. Tank's World War I experience, however, as he said, showed him that in this kind of a war of attrition, that a fighter would most likely have to operate in very bad conditions and be flown and maintained by pilots and crew that have less and less training as the war goes on. Because of this, Dank envisioned a design that traded in lighter weight for more ruggedness and the ability to carry weapons and armor, as well as being easier to use for personnel with less training. As a result, the Focke-Wulf 90 was quite a bit heavier than the B-49 or Spitfire, but the design team also put a large emphasis on balancing the controls of the plane to keep maneuverability up, and they did a great job at that. While the Focke-Wulf 90 with its high wing loading, among the highest of all single-engine fighters of World War II, will not be as good of a slow-speed turner as other fighters, its roll rate is excellent, and thanks to the well-balanced controls, it is very pleasant to maneuver and fly, and reacts very quickly and precise to control inputs, and keeps that up at high speeds as well. Now, the A or Anton version of the Focke-Wulf 90 that initially entered service was equipped with the also newly developed BMW 81 radial engine, which, while being aerodynamically less optimal, has for the time a very high power output, allowing the Focke-Wulf 90, when it entered service, to outperform the lighter Spitfire Mark 5, and generally made the Focke-Wulf 90 a very fast plane throughout the war. And the radial engine, of course, did not require a liquid cooling system, making it less vulnerable to damage. Another well-known feature of the Focke-Wulf 490 was the engine control unit called Kommandogerät in German for the BMW 801 engine. This makes handling of the plane much simpler. The pilot only has to move the throttle lever as you would in a modern fighter, and the control unit automatically adjusts the fuel mixture, RPM and so on as required, while in many other contemporary designs this had to be done manually. All that makes the Focke-Wulf 490 very comfortable for a World War II fighter and simple to handle in the air, which was of course one of the design goals of the plane. Now, the Focke-Wulf 490 Anton's radial engine had great low-altitude performance. However, it had the downside of having a very poor performance on higher altitude, which became more apparent as time went on and the altitude performance of Allied fighters increased. Addressing this problem led to the D or Dora variant of the Focke-Wulf 490 we have in DCS, with the primary difference being the change of engine from the radial BMW 801 to the V12 Junkers Jumo 213. The engine provided a similar or slightly higher power than the 801 on lower altitudes and a significantly better performance on higher altitudes. The new design of course led to some changes in the airframe to fit the new engine. The Dora's nose has a thinner cross-section, but the plane is longer overall than the Anton, giving it a sleeker appearance and the nickname Long Nose. The Jumo engine is controlled via a similar engine control unit than the BMW 801. Thanks to this engine control unit, you don't have to worry about engine management in the Dora as much as in other World War II designs, and you can concentrate on the fighting. Though it is still quite possible to blow up your engine anyway if you don't keep an eye on your gauges and keep your engine limits in mind, as I can tell you from personal experience. For armament, the Focke-Wulf 490 has two 13mm machine guns in the engine cowling as well as two 20mm cannons in the wing roots, so it is slightly less well armed than the contemporary A8 and A9s usually were, which had four 20mm cannons in the wings, though the outer ones could also be removed in that case. To aim the guns, you don't have the well-known Revi reflex sight you had in most German fighters in the DCS D-9 module, but the more advanced gyro gun sight, which operates exactly the same way than similar sights in other DCS modules like the P-51 or MiG-15. You select the wingspan on the sight and use the rotator grip on the throttle lever to adjust range. In addition to that, you can carry a single 500 kg bomb or four 50 kg bombs for ground attack, and the Werfergranate 21 and R4M air-to-air rockets, which were meant against bomber formations, are currently being introduced into the module as well. Well, that's a brief overview of the plane's history. Let's talk a little bit about what to expect from the plane in DCS. Since I myself have flown mostly jets in DCS so far and just recently started with the World War II fighters, I'm quite aware of how much of a different beasts those World War II props are in DCS in comparison to most jets, with very different challenges. So I do want to go over some things here, like taxi, takeoff and landing, which I don't usually have in my videos. But here I think the difference to the more modern planes in DCS is an interesting subject, and to provide also some hints to new players that just got into DCS World War II planes. Now, World War II fighters are of course from the system management side usually simpler, with less sophisticated systems and electronics being available to worry about. Though on the other hand you may need to focus more on engine management, but of course not so much in a Focke-Wulf 490 with its automatic engine control. Startup is quick and straightforward on the three World War II fighters we have in DCS at the moment, so that you can easily jump between them without necessarily having to take up a new startup checklist. Even if you haven't done it in a while, you can usually do it from memory. Press a few circuit breakers here, turn on some fuel pumps there, and hit the starter is generally about as much as you need to get the thing going. After you got the prop spinning though, and you get on your way to the runway, I can tell you, also from experience, things might get a little bit more challenging than you may be used to from a tricycle landing gear jet fighter with nose wheel steering. Most planes in DCS are pretty easy to taxi and take off. Most of them are of course modern jet planes with a tricycle landing gear. As long as you don't get too fast in them and flip on your side, and you know what button is for the nose wheel steering, you can generally drive them around like a car. Old tail draggers are a bit more of a different story though, especially if you talk about high performance World War II fighter aircraft, and can be a handful on the ground and takeoff when you have to fight the powerful engine's torque. But don't worry, it's all perfectly doable and not that big of a deal after you get used to it, but you do have to look it up in the manual or other sources on how it's done. You can't just go out and wing it on the first try. If you do, you most likely end up spun out next to the runway. The first thing to get used to on a tail dragger is the limited visibility to the front, with the nose pointing up, but that is of course to be expected, so you may have to drive in a bit of a zigzag sometimes to see where you're going. You can also adjust your seat height up to see better. To control the plane on the ground, you have to use the toe brakes, braking the left or right wheel to turn. When doing a tight turn, you may also have to use the opposite brake to stop the turn and not overshoot. Luckily, the Focke-Wulf 90 has a very wide landing gear, which makes it hard to flip over and crash it unless you really go way too fast into a corner. The BF-109 is less forgiving here with its narrow track gear. The tail wheel can either swivel freely or be locked in position. On the Focke-Wulf 90 you do that by pulling the stick back. That is important because with the locked tail wheel you can't turn around tight corners, but with the tail wheel unlocked and swiveling freely, the plane is very unstable on the ground and very difficult to keep moving in a straight line. Now, as just mentioned, the Focke-Wulf 90 has a wide track landing gear, making it safer to taxi and land than the BF-109, and I expected the Focke-Wulf 90 to be easier to take off than the BF-109 for that reason as well. Here I have to say though, I was a bit surprised. Having gotten into flying the BF-109 and the Focke-Wulf 90 at the same time, I found that I had a significantly easier time getting the BF-109 in the air than the Focke-Wulf 90. I guess this is simply because the lightweight BF-109 with its higher bow-to-weight ratio and lower wing loading is at its takeoff speed and in the air much faster, so there's simply not that much time to screw things up before you are in the air. On the Focke-Wulf 90 you have a longer takeoff run on which you have to keep the fighter straight and more time for things to go wrong. A very important tool here is the needle and ball turn and slip indicator, as it will tell you when you start turning a lot sooner than you would notice by looking out the window. With the instrument you can generally keep the plane on a straight line. Without it, just by looking out the window, you often react too late to a turn to one side or another because of engine torque or other factors and have to do a large correction, which often will lead to an overcorrection and end you up crashed next to the runway. As I said, it is perfectly doable, but you can't just wing it on the first try, and does require a bit more concentration than takeoff in most tricycle gear planes. Similar for landing, the Focke-Wulf 90 with its wide landing gear is less prone to accidents than the narrow track BF-109, but you still need to get the landing right. Optimally, you want to touch down with all three wheels at the same time, or at least close to it, because if you touch down at any kind of descent rate with the main wheels first, the downwards momentum will keep the tail going down as the main wheels touch down on the runway, increasing your angle of attack and therefore lift and make you jump back in the air, which often leads to a crash. That does take some time to perfect, though getting it done at least good enough is not that hard if you look at a manual first, again not winging it at the first try. Well, that's a bit of an overview of the Focke-Wulf 90 in DCS. Let's take a look at the fight or two in it. Now, those engagements took place on the ACG public server, and this first one here is my first proper flyout on a multiplayer server in a DCS World War II plane. So there's most certainly room for improvement in my flying, especially getting a feeling for how much you can push your engine is something I consider to be important, which improves with experience. Well, here I started from Kutaisi and I move west towards the combat zone between our airfield at Senaki and the enemy airfield. We are supposed to defend some truck convoys around here according to the briefing. Now, I spotted two planes moving south to north coming from the direction of the enemy airfield, and I figured they were enemy and approached them, hoping to get behind them, when a third plane, going the opposite way, north to south, passed in front of me, and this one is most likely friendly. And the two enemy planes turn after the third one, so I turn after the two of them. As the friendly plane, a BF-109, comes past me, I pull up, giving full power and try to get above the engagement, to hopefully dive in behind one of the enemy planes, which are B-51 Mustangs of course. At first it seems the two Mustangs are busy with the BF-109 and ignoring me, but as I come around I got one of the B-51s climbing towards me and then eventually past me. I'm not 100% sure if he has seen me or if he just came my way by accident after pulling up from an attack. But in any case, I turn around after him using the vertical and switching my MW50 injection on for a second to try to get above the Mustang at the same time as turning around, should he also come around to attack. It seems though the Mustang kept going. Again, I'm not sure if he even noticed me at this point. I can see some traces of fire to my left at lower altitude, but the Mustang in front of me is now diving back down towards the BF-109, I assume, and it looks like I can slot in behind him from here, so I go in a split S as the Mustang passes me. But I can't quite pull right in behind the Mustang at first, and would be in danger of getting too close to the ground if I tried, so instead I roll a bit and pull up to the Mustang's right, and then in behind him. The Mustang, by the looks of it, really tried to attack the BF-109, which is dogfighting the second Mustang at this time, and as the one I'm following is pulling back up after his pass, I get a quick shot off in its direction, but I don't know if I hit anything with this quick burst. As a matter of fact, I'm still not 100% sure if the Mustang has realized I'm here yet, and keep following it as it dives back down. But in any case, the Mustang seems to still focus on trying to engage the BF-109 and is following it as it is diving back down. I again can't follow the B-51 directly without risking to get too fast in the dive and crash into the ground, but instead I follow to the right of the B-51 and as it pulls up again slot in behind the Mustang again, which gets a quick burst off at the BF-109 as it dives past us again, but the Mustang stalls in the process. Now he gets his plane under control again, but I can get another quick burst off, and I figure if he did not know before, he certainly knows I'm here now. I keep chasing after the B-51, and as we level out, I go for throttle and turn the MW-50 on again for a short duration, just in case the Mustang tries to make a run for it. But he does not, and I line up another shot. The Mustang is a little smaller in the sight than my crosshair, so I aim a bit in front of it, and this time I get lucky. The Mustang goes out of control, most likely because of pilot hit, and as I fly past it, the Mustang goes down. I pull up to get some altitude back and quickly check my engine instruments, but as I look back to where the B-51 crashed, I can see the BF-109 again, and it still has the second Mustang behind it, and it is already damaged. So I come around and try to get the other Mustang off the BF-109's tail. I dive back down and try to get a shot at the Mustang, but both the BF-109 as well as the Mustang can turn tighter than my Focke 490 in this situation with the lower wing loading, so if they both do a maximum G turn I can't follow, at least not in the same flight path. So after getting a quick burst off at the Mustang, I go up in a high yo-yo turn to counter my worst turn rate in this situation. The Mustang hits the BF-109 again though, and then pulls up, but now we have more friendlies show up and attack the Mustang as well. I get a bit closer to the Mustang again, and I try to go for another attack on the Mustang as it comes back down and tries to get behind the BF-109 again. But as before, I can't quite match the Mustang's turn rate as it turns to the right, and I go up in a high yo-yo again, but this time the Mustang rolls around and reverses course back towards me, so I line it up and fire as the Mustang passes in front of me. I think I got at least a few hits here, but not enough, and as I turn back around, the Mustang appears to still be fully in the game and turns into me as well, almost getting a shot with its better turn rate. So in this case, with the Mustang's better turn rate and this being my first flyout, I decide to go full throttle and turn the MW-50 on again as the B-51 passes me, to get some distance from it, using the plane's good speed to get out of the situation. The Mustang, if it turns after me, will lose some speed doing so, so I should be able to pull away just fine. That's the point of having a fast plane after all. I again take a quick look at my engine instruments, and then I look back to see what's going on, and looking back I can see that the second friendly plane, another BF-109, came back down to attack the Mustang again, and Mustang is not following me anymore, so I'm free to turn around and get back into the action. I go up in a loop to get some altitude and get above the action to attack from above as necessary. But as I arrive back, the B-49 has already finished off the P-51. And the mission ends shortly after that, so this is it for this first little fight. Let's take a look at one more quick engagement in the Focke-Wulf 490. Here I was on the way to the ships that act as targets going from south to north up the coast, when I spot an enemy plane out over the sea and I move towards it. The enemy plane saw me too and is also coming my way, though I'm at slightly higher altitude at the moment. Now as we merge and pass each other, I slowly start to pull up to turn my speed back into altitude, planning to come around in a slow looping. Looking back I can see that the P-51 does the same thing and also comes around in the vertical, which is a pity. I would have much preferred it if he would have turned around in a nice horizontal turn, wasting lots of energy. I in the meantime however delayed for too long. I should have pulled up more and gone vertical much sooner, but now it's too late for that, and I wasted a good deal of my energy advantage. I turn around and dive towards the Mustang after that, hoping I still have enough of an edge that I can get above it after passing the Mustang. We dive towards each other again, and as the Mustang passes above me, I slowly pull up again, going full throttle with the MW50 engaged, and pull up into the vertical, hoping I can get enough vertical separation to the Mustang to go on the offensive again. But it seems I don't have the necessary speed to get an advantage here, and I can't wait too long or I give the Mustang a potentially good shot as my plane loses its speed and hangs in the air. So I start to go back down again, past the Mustang another time. Now I decide to give it another try in the vertical. So up we go again. It appears though we still can't really get any separation here. And this time as I go up I wait a little bit too long and eventually stall the plane, which costs me some more energy. Enough for the B-51 to catch up to me as I stall the plane. And as I get the nose pointed back down and start to build up some speed again, the Mustang can slot in behind my plane. That, I figure, is at least a good opportunity to try out the plane's roll rate a bit. With the Mustang closing in, I hope I can draw him in closer while using the plane's roll rate to make a harder target and eventually get the Mustang to overshoot and then go on the offensive again. I start with a tight turn to the left, and then as the Mustang closes in and is about to get the lead to fire, I roll around and go the other direction, keeping an eye on the Mustang and trying to time it so that I roll around the other way when the Mustang gets his nose pointed my way again. Now the Mustang isn't a great target for this as it doesn't roll bad itself, but there's still a difference in roll rate. Now, while I want the Mustang to come closer and overshoot, I would like that to happen with as little speed difference as possible, and therefore as little energy difference as possible. Sure, I could just go idle throttle and slow down a lot right at the start, and the Mustang would most likely streak past, but I would not have any speed to go on the offensive myself after that, and the Mustang could just come around and attack again, so that would be pointless. But if the Mustang overshoots with only a slightly higher speed or no speed advantage at all, I can use my plane's better power to weight ratio after that to hopefully catch back up in speed right after it comes past and go back on the offensive. So I try to keep my speed at a reasonable level at first, and only throttle back fully for a very short time when the Mustang is close enough to get it to fly past quickly, like right now. And when I do so, I do get the Mustang to fly past slowly, and once I am sure it is past me, I ram the throttle back forward for a full power and use my plane's power to weight ratio to catch back up to the Mustang in energy level. I plan to use my MW50 as well, but I still had my MW50 injection on from the vertical maneuvering earlier, so when I flip the switch I turn it off instead of on. But I do manage to get behind the Mustang and I can attack now. I adjust the range on my turret sight a bit and fire a quick burst on the Mustang as I get it in my sight, though I'm not sure how successful that burst was. It looks however that the B-51 is diving towards the water. I'm not sure if it's going down or not, but I know I don't want to follow it here because I might not be able to pull out of it in time if I do. The B-51 does manage to pull back up right above the water, and I don't think I would have been able to with my plane's higher wing loading if I would have followed the B-51 directly. Now I try to get another attack in as the Mustang passes above me, but now we have another plane, BF-109, coming in to assist, and the BF-109 slots in behind the Mustang and finishes the enemy plane off. So this is it for this fight. I thought this one looked kinda nice and was fun. Well, that was a bit of an overview and some fights in the Focke-Wulf 190 in DCS, and this is it for this video. As always, I hope it was entertaining, thanks for watching, and maybe I'll see you next time.